Hello, hello. It is time to continue along with our science. And last week you received a Spring Tides, Neap Tides journal page. I handed that out to you in class, but we didn't get to actually list these things out together. So part of last week was watching the video about Spring Tides and Neap Tides. I included that video again just so that you could have it kind of fresh in your mind before we complete these things together. So we've been talking all about tides, and we understand that tides are caused by the effect of the moon's gravity on Earth. And when you watch this video, we saw that the sun is also involved and has a gravitational pull. The sun doesn't have quite as large of an effect because this isn't drawn to scale. It's much farther away. But the sun's gravity does cause some special tides called spring tides and neap tides. So I want you to see today how it's all related, the sun, moon, earth system. All right, so you should be filling this out with me. And again, if you haven't watched that video that's before this on the spring and neap tides, I think watching that first would be really helpful. Okay, try not to pay attention to the little creepy face on here. It was the best diagram I found to show this part. So just pretend that he's not staring into your soul right now. Okay, so spring tides first. So here's the earth, here's the moon, here's the sun. When they're all lined up like this, we're gonna be in the new moon phase or the full moon phase, okay? So it either happens when we're in the new moon phase or it happens when we're in the full moon phase. We still have our, when the moon is lined up like this, we have high tides on either side twice a day and low tides above and below. We have that twice a day. And as the moon moves, it kind of moves along with it. I wish I could make this diagram move, but it's just a paper copy. We can't do that. That's why the video is so important. So when things are set up like this, we've got all kinds of gravitational pulls going on. What happens is we add the sun's pull, and the high tides end up higher than normal. And then if the high tides are higher than normal, then that means that the low tides are lower than normal. So when you are in the new moon phase or in the full moon phase, you end up having higher tides than normal and lower tides than normal. So it says over here, spring tides occur during and we're talking about the phases, they occur either during a new moon phase or a full moon phase. And we said that results in a higher high tide and a lower low tide. You might be thinking, well, why do I have to learn this? How does this help me? Well, we live around a lot of water here in Michigan, and I bet you quite a few of you have been out on a boat. And if you are out on a boat, you really need to pay close attention. If you're gonna have extra low tides, you could end up getting stuck somewhere, okay? And extra high tides, like higher high tides, could be dangerous for you if you're out on the water. So you do need to pay close attention to that. Also, if any of you like to fish, usually you can catch more fish during a new moon phase. So paying attention to those phases of the moon and the effects that they have on the tides can catch you some more fish. All right, the next one that we talked about, or that you learned about in that video, are called neap tides. So you can see on this diagram, we still have our high tides, but this time the moon is up above and below. And there's high tide, low tide, right? And this happens, neap tides happen during third quarter or first quarter. And remember, we can call third quarter, last quarter, they mean the same thing. But basically, in this one, these were all lined up and everything's kind of pulling on everything else. With this, because it's not directly across from it, it doesn't have as strong of a gravitational pull. This is still gonna be farther away. So because we don't have that strong pull on it, everything ends up being lower than normal, okay? So when we have first quarter or we have third quarter, during those moon phases, your high tide is lower and your low tide is lower. So if, again, it can be kind of scary if you're out on the water and you have seriously low tides and you're used to the water being at a higher level, you could get yourself stuck. Or maybe you wouldn't be able to catch as many fish. So sad. All right, so neap tides occur during first quarter, or on the diagram it says third quarter, we know that that can mean last as well. Moon phases. So that's when this happens. So neap tides happen during first quarter or last quarter, and it results in tide heights that are lower than normal. So when we had spring tides, it was a higher high tide and a lower low tide, which makes sense because if the other tides are higher, you know, both on either side, then our low tides, like the water's got to come from somewhere, it's going to be lower. Here, it's just lower all the way around because there's not as much of a pull going on from the sun. So the sun's gravity doesn't have as much of an effect on it. All right, we're gonna put this in our journals together as well. So you can just take this sheet and go ahead and put it in your science folder. And when we come back to class, we'll put this into our journals. See you soon.